The air is still, almost impossibly still. Imagine standing on an earth where the sky glows pale and the oceans no longer move, a world held in suspended breath. You can almost hear the silence stretch across continents, as if the planet itself had fallen into a deep, dreamless sleep. The year isn't measured in calendars here. It's measured in layers of ice, building one upon another until even memory freezes. Scientists call this time the snowball Earth, but to your imagination it feels more like the night the world decided to rest. What if time itself slowed when the cold came? What if, for 100 million years, our planet simply drifted between heartbeats, waiting for the next pulse of warmth? And what if, just like the Earth, you too carry within you the same rhythm, a cycle of freezing, quiet, and awakening again? As you listen and breathe a little slower, imagine the entire planet under a shroud of white, mountains buried, seas locked beneath miles of ice, winds whispering softly over plains that had forgotten the color green. It sounds like science fiction, yet the evidence is carved into stone. In 1998, Paul Hoffman from Harvard University presented rock sample from Namibia showing telltale dropstones, pebbles that fell from melting icebergs into ancient ocean sediments. Those stones shouldn't have been there. Their shape and polish spoke of glacial travel, far from any polar region. The implications were staggering. Ice once reached the equator. Picture that for a moment. Tropical seas frozen solid, sunlight glinting off continents of frost. How could life survive such stillness? How could warmth ever return? Drifting deeper into understanding, you realize that this isn't just about climate. It's about endurance. About how even in the coldest silence, something delicate kept breathing. Beneath the ice, scientists believe thin films of liquid water existed, warmed by volcanic heat and pressure. There, in those hidden pockets, microbes endured, tiny sparks of persistence clinging to life's thread. Each breath of theirs became a quiet act of defiance against eternity. And somewhere in the darkness, perhaps time itself paused to listen. You might imagine yourself as one of those microorganisms, suspended in a cold ocean under miles of frozen sky. You don't move much. You don't need to. Energy is scarce, but still you live, waiting for the next dawn. The Earth was not dead then. It was dreaming. Many scientists suggest this deep freeze began around 720 million years ago, during what we call the cryogenian period. Temperatures plunged, oceans crystallized, and glaciers crawled toward the equator. For tens of millions of years, the planet remained locked in ice. And yet, even in that silence, volcanoes continued to breathe. Beneath the crust, molten rock stirred, releasing carbon dioxide into the air above the frozen oceans. Slowly and visibly, a blanket of greenhouse gases built up, trapping the faintest trace of warmth from the distant sun. Over unimaginable time, that warmth began to whisper through the frost. Imagine it, the first drop of meltwater in 100 million years, tracing a silver path across blue, white plains. The ice groaned, sighed, and began to remember motion. You could almost feel it, a gentle thaw, like waking after the longest sleep. If you listen closely even now, there's something in you that responds to that image, a knowing that every freeze holds the seed of rebirth. The melt began in whispers, not storms. Rivers of liquid light traced paths across the white expanse, glinting under a dim, distant sun. The ice cracked inside, releasing air that had been trapped for eons, ancient breath returning to the wind. Dr. Richard Alley, a glaciologist from Pennsylvania State University, once described this thaw as the planet's slow exhale. He explained how rising carbon dioxide built a greenhouse so intense that, when the balance finally tipped, the ice melted at extraordinary speed. Entire continents may have flooded beneath rushing meltwater. Imagine the sound, the creak of shifting glaciers, the hiss of vapor, the world waking in slow motion, and through it all life waited. Bacteria clung to the undersides of ice sheets. Algae floated in rare liquid layers near hydrothermal vents. In that deep time, survival was an art of patience. You might even say it was meditation in motionless form. As you listen, picture those small organisms, simple, ancient, yet determined. Their chemistry carried the code that would one day shape forests, whales, and you. Every quiet moment of their existence was a promise that life, no matter how fragile, would endure the next dawn. When the thaw finally reached the oceans, currents stirred again. Minerals trapped in the ice spilled into the water, feeding blooms of cyanobacteria. Oxygen began to rise. The planet's color returned slowly, like paint spreading across a blank canvas. Dr. Gabrielle Walker, in her book Snowball Earth 2003, called this era planetary resurrection. She wrote that the release of carbon dioxide likely spiked global temperatures by tens of degrees, from deep freeze to tropical warmth in less than a millennium. The planet had gone from silence to song. Now let your breath match that rhythm, slow inhales, gentle releases, as if you too are thawing after a cosmic winter. The stones that formed beneath those glaciers still hold microscopic scratches, each line a memory of movement. Geologists study them to trace the ice's flow, the same way we read wrinkles in an ancient face. The earth remembers. Rock is its diary, and hidden inside that memory is a message. Even when everything stops, transformation is already beginning. You might wonder how the sun could allow such deep slumber, or why the universe permits cycles of suffering and renewal. But in nature, rest is not punishment, it's preparation. The earth was not destroyed by the freeze, it was refined by it. Some researchers believe this frozen world was triggered by a chain of feedbacks. Bright ice reflecting sunlight, cooling the air, spreading more ice, reflecting still more light. Dr. James Kirschvink of Caltech proposed the idea in 1992, coining the term snowball Earth. He suggested that continents clustered near the equator, altering ocean chemistry, lowering greenhouse gases, and tipping the balance toward endless winter. Imagine the continents themselves as dreamers, drifting together beneath clouds of frost, unaware they are sculpting the destiny of life. During that immense sleep, the magnetic field continued to hum. The moon still pulled at invisible tides beneath the ice. Comets passed overhead unnoticed. To a cosmic observer, the planet would have looked like a frozen pearl, silent, radiant, and impossibly still. You may feel something familiar in that image, a sense that even in absolute stillness, motion continues beneath awareness. Your heartbeat, your breath, the faint hum of neurons firing as you drift. The Earth's sleep was not death, it was consciousness turned inward. When the glaciers finally broke apart, the world must have glistened like crystal. Torrents carved new valleys, atmosphere thickened with mist, lightning cracked across refreezing seas, sparking complex molecules, the chemistry of future life. Some scientists think this reawakening set the stage for the Cambrian explosion, when multicellular life burst into complexity. The hardships of the freeze may have been the training ground for intelligence itself. Think about that. Every challenge, every silence, every pause, not an end but a forge. If the planet could emerge more alive after 100 million years of stillness, what could you become after a single night of rest? The lesson of Snowball Earth is not just scientific, it's deeply human. In cycles of collapse and renewal, existence learns resilience. Drifting deeper, you might sense how this story of global ice mirrors your own inner seasons. There are times when nothing seems to move, when energy hides beneath layers of frost. Yet beneath the quiet, warmth gathers, change prepares its entrance, and when it arrives it feels like light through eyelids, gentle, unstoppable, new. Imagine now the world reborn. The sky is blue again, the oceans alive with plankton. The continents wrapped in mist and color. The frozen mirror has melted into motion. Volcanoes dot the horizon, breathing steam into the air. Their eruptions scatter minerals that enrich the soil, the same minerals that one day will feed forests and the food you eat. Every grain of sand carries the memory of fire and ice, silence and awakening. Dr. Paul Falkowski from Rutgers University once noted that these glaciations may have set the stage for the rise of oxygen, breathing life. That without them, complex organisms might never have evolved. The freeze was not a mistake, it was a doorway. You can feel that truth in your own body. Each time you sleep, your consciousness withdraws into darkness, reorganizing, renewing, preparing to awaken different. You, too, are the earth in miniature, freezing, thawing, remembering. Allow yourself to breathe with that rhythm, inhale the quiet, exhale the return of warmth. As you drift further, picture the last fragments of ancient ice melting into the sea. The sound is soft, like whispering glass. Somewhere, the first coral reef begins to form. Somewhere, the first creature feels sunlight on its skin. Time moves again, but not as it did before. The planet carries a new memory, a deeper wisdom carved by endurance. You listening now, share that lineage. The calcium in your bones, the oxygen in your lungs, the hydrogen in your blood, all shaped by that ancient freeze and thaw. The world once slept for 100 million years, and when it woke, it dreamed of life more vividly than ever before. So, as your own eyes grow heavy, remember rest is not the opposite of life. It is its continuation by quieter means. The earth proved that long ago. Let yourself drift back into the same timeless stillness that once held the entire world, where silence is not emptiness but origin, where every breath is a small awakening, and where, even in the coldest night, something warm within you keeps watch. Imagine the entire world wrapped in ice, not just the mountains or the poles, but every ocean, every forest, every inch of land sealed beneath a sheet of white. The air itself cold enough to crystallize breath, the seas solid enough to walk upon. For 100 million years, Earth slept. You might close your eyes and picture it, a planet shimmering like a frozen pearl, spinning silently in space. The sun still burned above it, but its warmth barely reached the surface. Days and nights passed, yet time itself seemed to pause in the endless cold. Scientists call it the snowball Earth, a time when our homeworld froze so completely that even the equator was buried beneath ice. It sounds impossible, yet the rocks, those quiet witnesses of time, still hold the memory. In 1998, geologists at Harvard, led by Dr. Paul Hoffman, found signs in Namibia, layers of ancient sediment known as cap carbonates. These strange stones only form when glaciers melt rapidly and oceans surge with life again. It was as if the planet had thawed in an instant, after ages of silence. That discovery changed how we saw our own history. Earth wasn't always a gentle cradle. Sometimes it was a tomb that waited to awaken. But what could freeze an entire planet? Was it the dimming of the sun, the shifting of continents, or something deeper, a cosmic rhythm that slowed the heartbeat of the world itself? Scientists think it began when volcanic gases faded and carbon dioxide, the blanket that keeps our planet warm, grew thin. Without enough of it, sunlight reflected off ice and snow, bouncing back into space. The colder it got, the faster the ice spread, until there was nowhere left to run from winter. You can almost feel it, that slow encroaching quiet. Oceans sealing, forests vanishing, life retreating to the deepest cracks in the ice. Perhaps if you had stood there, you'd have heard the stillness. No birds, no rustling trees, just the low hum of a frozen wind across the plains. Yet even in that desolation, something stirred. Deep beneath the ice, near volcanic vents, life survived, tiny microbes clinging to warmth, refusing extinction. They waited for millions of years. And in that patience, they became the seeds of everything that would come after. Dr. Nick Butterfield, from the University of Cambridge, once said, "Snowball Earth may have been the greatest filter of all. Only the strongest, the most adaptable, survived it." Imagine that, the world's deepest winter shaping the future of life itself. As you breathe softly now, imagine the slow pulse of a frozen ocean. Beneath the stillness, small things move. Energy hums. The planet dreams of thaw. The thaw did not come suddenly, not in human time, not even in the rhythm of centuries. It began with whispers deep within the earth, magma stirring, volcanoes exhaling their ancient breath. Each eruption released clouds of carbon dioxide back into the sky, slow, invisible warmth building with every sigh. Imagine that moment, beneath a ceiling of white, hidden continents shuddered, releasing fire into the frozen dark. Over millions of years, the air grew heavier with gas, and the sun's light, trapped once again, began to seep through the frost. At first, nothing seemed to change. Ice stretched endlessly from pole to pole, reflecting every ray of light away. But then, somewhere, a drop of meltwater formed. It slipped through a crack, then another, and another, and the silence broke. Scientists believe that once the melting began, it was unstoppable, a cascade of feedbacks reversing the freeze as quickly as it had come. The Harvard team estimated that once greenhouse gases reached 50 times their modern levels, global temperatures rose with staggering speed. The planet went from deep freeze to tropical humidity in less than 1,000 years, a blink in geologic time. You can almost feel it, the slow awakening of a sleeping giant. The ice grown split and thundered as oceans reclaimed their movement. Rivers were born again. Mountains, buried pharaohs, lifted their faces to sunlight for the first time in ages. Dr. Linda Soul of NASA once described it as Earth taking its first breath after suffocation. The air thickened, storms brewed, and rain, real, liquid rain, fell for the first time in 100 million years. It struck the hard ice, carving rivers, washing minerals into seas that had been sealed in silence. And there, in the new waters, the something miraculous began. The sudden rush of nutrients triggered what scientists call the Great Oxygenation Bloom. Tiny organisms, freed from the prison of ice, multiplied in unimaginable numbers, painting the oceans green with life. You can picture it, the blue world reborn, colors bleeding back into existence, turquoise seas, gray skies, and the pale gold of sunlight warming what had once been a crystal tomb. Geologists studying ancient rock cores from Australia and Canada found traces of this transition: sulfur isotopes, rare layers of ironstone, proof of oxygen's violent return. The planet, it seems, had inhaled deeply, and the breath of that awakening still lives within us. As you lie here, listening, imagine the sound of melting ice dripping in rhythm, slow, steady, eternal. That was the heartbeat of the world restarting. But not everything survived the thaw. Whole lineages of life vanished. The balance that had once ruled the frozen earth gave way to chaos. Floods, storms, wild heat. The survivors adapted again, and in that adaptation, evolution found new shapes. From that age of crisis, the first multicellular beings emerged, creatures more complex, more aware. It was as if the universe had paused for 100 million years, only to unpause into a rush of creation. The thaw transformed everything. Oceans that had been silent for eons began to churn again, swirling with color, energy, and sound. Beneath the waves, the chemistry of life was rewriting itself. Nutrients released from the melting ice enriched the seas, creating fertile grounds for new forms of existence. Imagine drifting there, floating in the warmth of a newly awakened ocean. Tiny organisms, once dormant, now shimmer in the light, dividing, evolving, connecting. These humble beginnings would someday lead to complex life, to motion awareness, and eventually to thought itself. Dr. Shuhai Xiao from Virginia Tech once said, "It was catastrophe that gave us consciousness." The snowball Earth was not just a freeze, it was a cleansing, a global reset that cleared the old and prepared the planet for the miracle that followed. Without that pause, perhaps the story of life would never have advanced beyond single cells. It's strange to think that silence and stillness could be the seeds of awakening. But that's how nature works. Cycles of stillness, followed by bursts of creation. Death and rebirth, cold and warm, sleep and awakening. In many ways, Earth mirrors the rhythm of your own mind. When you sleep, your brain enters darkness, stillness, silence. And yet, beneath that calm surface, electrical storms flicker, neurons repairing, reorganizing, preparing for the light of waking. Perhaps the planet, too, was dreaming during that frozen age. Imagine it, the entire world asleep under miles of crystal ice, its core still glowing with molten energy, its oceans dreaming beneath frozen lids, waiting for the signal to rise again. Scientists at Caltech found that deep sea vents may have remained active through the entire global freeze. These geothermal oases, pockets of warmth in an otherwise frozen world, might have served as refuges for life. Tiny microbes huddled around the vents, feeding on minerals, defying extinction. When the ice finally melted, these survivors spread across the reborn oceans, colonizing everything. It's poetic, isn't it? Even in a planet's darkest night, life found a way to whisper, "Not yet." And when light returned, those whispers became songs. The songs of the first complex beings, moving, sensing, interacting. Dr. Malcolm Walter, a paleobiologist from the University of New South Wales, described this period as the dawn after the deepest night. It was during this post-glacial bloom that organisms began to develop cooperation, cells joining with other cells, forming symbiotic unions. What had been isolated life became interconnected life, and maybe that's what consciousness really is. Not a single spark, but the merging of many lights. The planet learned to cooperate with itself, just as your neurons cooperate to form a single awareness. As you continue to listen, imagine that frozen silence long ago, turning into a gentle hum of motion. The hum becomes rhythm. The rhythm becomes heartbeat. And from that heartbeat, the story of every creature, every dream, every thought began. The snowball Earth was not a failure of nature. It was its masterpiece in disguise, a perfect balance of destruction and preparation, a great inhale before creation's next breath. As the last glaciers melted and rivers carved their way through the newborn continents, the world began to move again, slowly, tenderly, like a body waking from a long, cold dream. The sky filled with moisture. Clouds drifted in sweeping patterns, their shadows crawling over new oceans. And somewhere beneath that mist, evolution stirred, cautious but determined. Dr. Paul Hoffman of Harvard University, one of the leading figures in snowball Earth research, described this thaw as the greatest transformation in Earth's surface environment since the origin of the planet itself. And he was right. The very chemistry of the oceans changed, iron-rich. Once stagnant waters suddenly reacted with oxygen, turning from green to blue. The rusting of the planet had begun, leaving behind bands of iron in the rocks we still find today, silent records of a world learning to breathe again. With oxygen rising and sunlight returning, something miraculous happened. Photosynthetic organisms, those ancient architects of life, began to thrive again, pumping oxygen into the atmosphere, creating the air you breathe at this very moment. Every inhale you take is a whisper from that ancient thaw. Every exhale a continuation of that endless rhythm. Imagine the planet glistening like glass reflecting the reborn sun. Imagine standing there, if you could, a witness to the first dawn after 100 million years of silence. The ice cracks, water roars, mist rises in silver curtains, and the horizon glows with gold. The world exhales, and in that exhale, you are born, not yet human, not yet conscious, but alive. Nick Butterfield from the University of Cambridge once proposed that this thaw set the stage for the Ediacaran explosion, the first appearance of complex multicellular life. Creatures shaped like fronds and discs began to cover the seafloor, elegant, ghostly beings that drifted and pulsed with the tides. They didn't have eyes or bones or voices, yet they were the ancestors of all living things, the first whispers of complexity that would eventually become the human mind. Pause for a moment and feel that connection. Somewhere in your DNA lies a memory of that transition, the thaw, the light, the awakening. It's the same pattern that lives in every night you fall asleep and every morning you rise again. The pattern of forgetting and remembering, the pattern of stillness and motion. When the planet froze, it wasn't dying. It was reorganizing, resetting the stage for something far greater. And maybe that's what sleep really is too. Not an ending, but a recalibration. When you close your eyes and drift, the world outside might pause, but inside, your mind is rearranging, building, healing. Just like Earth did, there's a strange comfort in that symmetry. The universe doesn't waste silence, it uses it. Some ancient traditions understood this. In Hindu cosmology, the god Vishnu sleeps upon the cosmic ocean between the cycles of creation and destruction. His dreams become worlds, and when he awakens, they come alive. When he sleeps, they dissolve. The same rhythm of stillness and rebirth. The same cosmic breath that moves through galaxies, planets, and people alike. It's as though the snowball Earth wasn't just a geological event. It was the universe itself pausing to dream, a pause so deep that everything could be rewritten. Dr. Richard Alley, a geoscientist from Penn State University, once said that Earth's extremes are not accidents, they're teachers. Every ice age, every storm, every silence, each one leaves behind lessons written in stone and air. Lessons about patience, resilience, and the hidden purpose of stillness. Think about that. The next time you find yourself in a period of waiting, or darkness, or cold, remember, even the planet needed time to sleep before it could create something extraordinary. You might not always see growth while it's happening, but beneath the ice, something always moves. As you breathe slowly now, as the world outside grows quiet, you can almost feel the pulse of that ancient thaw beneath your skin, the echo of warmth returning to a world that had almost forgotten what sunlight felt like. Every cell in your body hums with the memory of survival. Every thought carries the rhythm of rebirth. The earth was once frozen for 100 million years, and yet here you are, listening, breathing, alive. Proof that even the deepest freeze can't stop the rhythm of existence. The lesson of the snowball earth is simple, and eternal stillness is not the opposite of life. It's part of its design. Let that truth settle into you. The next time you rest or fall into silence or sleep, remember the world beneath the ice. Remember that creation waits in quiet places. And as you drift deeper now, let the rhythm of that ancient thaw guide your breath. Inhale warmth. Exhale release. Because even after 100 million years of frozen silence, the earth found its way back to the sun. And so do you. Have you ever wondered what the ancient teachers really meant when they said time is an illusion? Not a metaphor, not a poetic line, but an actual truth they lived by. They didn't see time as a river flowing one way. They saw it as an ocean, a vast, motionless sea, where every wave already exists, every ripple already formed, every moment happening all at once. And maybe they were right. Long before scientists studied time, mystics were mapping it from within. They didn't need machines or telescopes. They closed their eyes and traveled through consciousness itself. The Vedas of ancient India spoke of Kala, the eternal cycle, creation, preservation, dissolution, and rebirth. Not linear, circular. An endless rhythm, just like your breath. Inhale a creation, exhale a release. In Egypt, the priests of Heliopolis believed in Zep Tepi, the first time, not a date in history, but a recurring event. They said that every dawn the universe recreated itself, identical yet entirely new. The sun rising wasn't repetition, it was resurrection. And in Greece, the philosopher Heraclitus whispered, "Time is a child playing a game." To him, everything was in motion, yet nothing truly moved. Because the pattern repeats, endlessly, perfectly. Imagine for a moment, you're standing in a temple thousands of years ago. Torches flicker, stone walls hum with chants. You watch as the priests trace symbols across the air, circles, spirals, infinite loops. They weren't worshipping gods of stone. They were honoring the architecture of time itself. Now, as you continue to listen, drifting deeper into this moment, consider this. Every sacred tradition, from the east to the west, carried this same knowing. Time is not the master, consciousness is. Lao Tzu in the Tao Te Ching said, "There is a time for being ahead and a time for being behind. But in the stillness beyond both, the Tao, there is no time at all, only flow." The Mayans too, with their intricate calendar systems, didn't measure time the way we do. They saw it as harmonic resonance, a living pulse, an energy that rises and falls like music. Each cycle held a different tone, a different vibration. And every human life, your life, plays within that rhythm. In the Popol Vuh, the sacred text of the Maya, it says that creation begins in darkness, in still water. Then the gods speak, and time begins. Sound creates sequence. Awareness creates duration. Without awareness, there is no time. Pause for a moment, let that idea settle in your mind like a soft wave. If awareness creates time, then what happens when you sleep? When your awareness dissolves into the dark, does time dissolve with it? It's the same question the Upanishads asked over 2,000 years ago. What is the nature of the self that dreams, that wakes, that sleeps? They said that when you sleep, you merge back into Brahman, the infinite reality where time and form cease to exist. You are no longer bound by the ticking of clocks or the turning of stars. You are beyond sequence, beyond beginning and end. The Persian mystic Rumi wrote, "The time has come to turn your heart into a temple of fire." He wasn't speaking of minutes or years. He meant intensity, the quality of presence that burns away time itself. Because when you are truly present, time cannot exist. And maybe that's the secret all mystics discovered. When you become completely aware, right now, everything stops. The ticking halts, the edges blur, and eternity opens its eyes. Dr. Dean Radin, chief scientist at the Institute of Noetic Sciences, once said, "Mystics and meditators describe the same timeless awareness that physicists glimpse in quantum equations. When consciousness deepens enough, it meets the same infinity that science describes. Two paths, one destination. You might feel it too sometimes, when you're lost in a sunset or music or love. Moments where time stretches, softens, disappears. That's not imagination. That's contact. Contact with something beyond the clock. In 1967, psychologist Abraham Maslow described this in his studies of peak experiences. People reported moments of pure being, where hours felt like seconds and seconds like forever. He called it the eternal now, and it matched what the sages had been whispering for millennia. Imagine yourself walking through one of those ancient temples again. Torches flicker. Your footsteps echo against cold stone. At the center stands a statue of a god holding a serpent eating its own tail, the Ouroboros. It's the symbol of eternity, time devouring itself, the endless cycle of creation and destruction. The message carved beneath reads as above, so below, as within, so without, and you realize that they weren't just describing the universe. They were describing you, because within your mind the same cycles unfold, waking, dreaming, sleeping, awakening again. Each night time dissolves, each morning it begins again. Like the serpent, consciousness consumes its own moments to sustain the next. Dr. Jill Bolt Taylor, a neuroanatomist from Harvard, once had a stroke that silenced the left hemisphere of her brain, the part that organizes time and language. In that silence, she reported entering a state of timeless bliss. She said, "I could not define where I began or where I ended. Everything was energy. Everything was now." That's what the mystics meant by eternity. Not endless duration, but absence of separation. No before, no after, just pure presence. The Buddha called it the unborn, the unconditioned, the unending, and he taught that when the mind is still, when desire, fear, and thought fade, time itself dissolves. What remains is peace, infinite, effortless peace. As you listen now, let that idea wrap around you like a soft blanket. Time isn't chasing you, it's not flowing past you, it's breathing through you. You are not inside time, time is inside you. Think of a dream. When you dream, entire stories unfold, lifetimes, even in what the clock calls seconds. But inside the dream, time feels vast, endless, real. Only when you wake do you realize it was all one continuous moment of imagination. What if waking life is no different? What if consciousness is dreaming reality, painting moments across eternity, just so experience can unfold in sequence? That's what the Hermetic texts of Alexandria hinted at when they said, "As above, so below. As within, so without." The universe is your mind reflected outward. The rhythm of your heartbeat shapes the rhythm of existence itself. The philosopher Plotinus wrote that time was the moving image of eternity, a reflection of something changeless, projected into motion so that creation could be perceived. Like watching waves shimmer on water, the movement is visible, but the depth beneath is still. Imagine that stillness now. Imagine yourself sinking into it, the way a pearl sinks into the quiet ocean floor. You can almost feel the weight of centuries dissolving, the concept of before and after fading into soft light. The mystics weren't trying to escape time. They were learning how to see through it. Because when you realize time is not separate from awareness, the fear of it disappears. You no longer rush to outrun it. You flow with it, and flowing with time is the beginning of peace. The Zen master Dijen once wrote, "Time is not something that passes. Time is being itself. To exist is to be time. Every breath is the whole universe expressing itself as now." Let that sink in. Every inhale a creation, every exhale a return, every heartbeat a universe unfolding. Somewhere, perhaps in the silence between those beats, the true nature of time reveals itself, not as a line, but as a circle endlessly folding inward. You can almost hear it, that soft hum underneath everything, the sound of time breathing, the sound of eternity listening. And perhaps that's why the ancients spoke in poetry and parables, because words can't truly describe what it means to be outside of time. They can only point to it, gently, like a finger tracing ripples in still water. So maybe as you drift deeper into this story, you can imagine those ancient teachers, sitting beneath stars, breathing the same air, watching the same moon you see now. They weren't primitive. They were remembering that the same silence that existed before the first sunrise still lives within you, waiting. Watching the rhythm of your breath. Time begins when you wake. Time ends when you sleep. And in between you dream the world into being. And maybe, just maybe, that's all time ever was. A dream you share with the universe, one heartbeat at a time. The story of time took a sharp turn when science began to ask its own questions, not in temples, not in caves, but in quiet laboratories, lit by oil lamps and scattered papers. Humanity had always looked up at the stars for meaning, but now we began to measure them. In the 1600s, a man named Isaac Newton looked at the universe and saw a clock, a perfect mechanical clock wound by God at the beginning of creation. Every planet, every falling apple, every heartbeat, all ticking along the same steady rhythm. To Newton, time was absolute, unchanging. It flowed forward like a river no one could stop, every second identical to the last. He imagined that if you could stand outside the universe, you'd hear that clock ticking, steady, eternal, precise, simple, predictable. For nearly 2 centuries, this idea ruled the world of science. Time was the same for everyone, everywhere, a universal heartbeat. But nature had other plans. Fast forward to the 1800s, the industrial world was roaring. Steam trains thundered across continents. Telegraphs connected cities at lightning speed. For the first time in history, humanity needed synchronized time for trains, trade, and communication. But something strange started happening. Scientists noticed that the speed of light, unlike anything else, stayed constant. No matter how fast you moved toward it or away from it, that single mystery broke Newton's perfect clock, and into this confusion stepped a quiet, curious mind, Albert Einstein. In 1905, at just 26 years old, he proposed something revolutionary. Time wasn't absolute at all. It was flexible, elastic. It could stretch, slow, or even stop, depending on how fast you moved or how strong gravity was. Imagine that. The faster you go, the slower time moves for you. A traveler moving near the speed of light would age slower than those left behind. To prove it, Einstein used nothing but thought experiments, pure imagination. He pictured 2 twins. One stays on Earth, the other flies through space near light speed. When the traveling twin returns, less time has passed for him. He's younger. That's not science fiction. It's called time dilation, and today satellites orbiting Earth experience it every second. Their clocks run slightly slower than ours, and engineers must adjust them, or GPS would drift miles off course each day. Einstein's equations showed something even stranger. Space and time aren't separate. They're one fabric, space-time. Bend space, and time bends with it. Stretch gravity, and moments stretch too. Think of it like a soft blanket. Place a heavy object, like a planet, on it and the fabric curves. That curve tells everything else how to move. That's gravity. And inside that curve, time slows down. Right now, as you listen, time is actually passing slower near your feet, closer to Earth's gravity than near your head, only by a few trillionths of a second. But it's real. Einstein predicted it. Atomic clocks later proved it. The deeper we look, the stranger time becomes. In 1916, Einstein extended his ideas into general relativity, predicting black holes, regions where gravity is so intense, time stops altogether. Imagine approaching a black hole. To you, time feels normal, but to someone watching from afar, you appear to freeze, forever falling, never reaching the end. From their view, you become eternal. Time, it seemed, was not a river, but a landscape, a fabric you could stretch, twist, or even tear. And for the first time, the line between science and mysticism began to blur. Because the deeper scientists went, the more they discovered truths that ancient mystics had intuited centuries earlier. That time isn't constant. That perception shapes reality. That eternity exists within the present moment. Yet, Einstein himself was cautious. He once said, "The distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion." To him, the universe didn't happen in sequence. It existed all at once, a vast block of space-time. Every event, birth, death, sunrise, starlight, already woven into its fabric. We only experience it piece by piece, like reading one page of an infinite book. And that means somewhere in this fabric, your childhood still exists. Your future too. Every version of you, frozen in its own coordinate of time. The physicist Hermann Minkowski, Einstein's former teacher, summarized it beautifully. Henceforth, space by itself, and time by itself, are doomed to fade away into mere shadows, and only a kind of union of the two will preserve an independent reality. What a poetic idea. That time isn't something passing us by. It's a dimension we live inside. Now pause, take a slow breath, feel that. The sensation of time itself moving through you. But the story didn't stop with Einstein. In the 20th century, scientists zoomed even closer. into the quantum world, and there time became even stranger. At the smallest scales, particles don't behave like little billiard balls. They flicker in and out of existence. They appear, disappear, and reappear, as if time itself is pulsing. Quantum mechanics tells us that these particles don't have definite positions or moments until they are observed. In other words, without observation, time doesn't decide what happens. The famous double-slit experiment proved this. When unobserved, particles act like waves, spread across time and space. When observed, they collapse into a single moment, a single location. Observation, awareness, creates the timeline. Sound familiar? It's the same truth the mystics whispered thousands of years ago. Consciousness creates sequence. Awareness births time, and now physics began to echo their words. Some physicists, like John Wheeler, even proposed that the universe is participatory, that reality exists only through interaction. He famously said, "No phenomenon is a real phenomenon until it is an observed phenomenon." That means the universe isn't a movie already playing. It's a film developing as you watch it, frame by frame, moment by moment. Each thought, each perception, each act of awareness, painting another stroke across space-time. This brings us back to a strange question. If time changes depending on speed, gravity, and observation, what is real time? To answer that, scientists began exploring the arrow of time, the reason things move from past to future, not backward. They found that it's linked to something called entropy, the natural tendency of systems to move toward disorder. Eggs break, but they don't unbreak. Smoke spreads, but never recoils. Memories form, but can't reverse. This one-way direction, from order to chaos, gives time its flow. But at the deepest physical level, the equations of nature don't care which way time moves. They work the same forward or backward, meaning the arrow of time might not be built into reality. It might emerge only in large, complex systems, like us. Maybe time feels like it moves forward because we move forward, because consciousness perceives it that way. In truth, all moments may coexist, side by side, waiting for awareness to pass through them, like a beam of light scanning a film reel. In the quantum world, particles don't even obey chronological order. Experiments show that causes and effects can flip. A decision made now can influence what happened before. It's called retrocausality, and though still debated, it hints at something extraordinary. Time may not just flow, it may respond. Einstein once said, "The most incomprehensible thing about the universe is that it is comprehensible." And yet, even he couldn't fully explain why we experience time as we do, why we feel it passing, why we remember the past but not the future. That mystery led other thinkers, from physicists to philosophers, to one simple idea: maybe consciousness is the clock. Maybe it's not that we move through time, but that time moves through us, shaped by perception, attention, and awareness. Dr. Carlo Rovelli, a modern theoretical physicist, says, "Time is an illusion. Our naive perception of its flow doesn't correspond to physical reality." He believes that the universe doesn't have a single global time, only local times, tiny rhythms, each connected to different systems and observers. Every atom, every planet, every human heartbeat, keeping its own beat. So when you look at the stars, you're not seeing the present. You're looking into ancient light, time that left millions of years ago. Every night sky is a memory, a silent, glowing archive of the past, and maybe so are we, because every cell in your body carries the memory of stars, carbon, iron, oxygen, all forged in supernova billions of years ago. You are stardust arranged in the shape of awareness, a fragment of eternity remembering itself. So when science speaks of time as curved, flexible, or relative, it's not describing something out there. It's describing you. The clock on your wall ticks only because your mind divides eternity into pieces it can measure. Your pulse, your breath, your heartbeat, all small reflections of cosmic rhythms. In the vastness of the universe, there is no that applies everywhere. Every observer has their own, every perspective its own slice of eternity. And maybe that's the beauty of it. We don't live in one universal time. We live in countless overlapping songs of time, interwoven, resonant, alive. Science gave us the language to describe this. Mysticism gave us the wisdom to feel it. One speaks in equations, the other in silence. both pointing toward the same mystery. That time is not the ruler of reality. It's the rhythm of it, the heartbeat of consciousness unfolding. So as you breathe in now, you might imagine the fabric of space-time stretching and relaxing around you, each inhale expanding the universe, each exhale drawing it closer again. Because in a very real way, that's what's happening. The universe isn't moving through time. It is time. And you, listening, breathing, existing, are part of that movement. You are not separate from it. You are the pulse within the cosmic heart. And maybe, as you drift into the next moment, you'll realize time was never ticking outside you. It was always breathing from within. Imagine a planet wrapped in silence. The oceans locked beneath miles of ice, mountains buried, continents disguised. For millions of years nothing stirred, no waves, no rain, no seasons. And then slowly, something began to change. A faint warmth, a whisper of movement beneath the frozen surface. The first hint that Earth was about to awaken from its endless winter. Scientists call it the Great Thaw, a time when the frozen Earth began to melt, not all at once, but slowly, patiently, as if testing whether life could return. It's hard to imagine. The entire world, once an unbroken sheet of white, beginning to shimmer with pools of blue again. The sun, still pale and distant, glinting on patches of open water, and beneath those cracks in the ice, something extraordinary waiting. Dr. Paul Hoffman from Harvard University spent decades studying the signs of this ancient event. He found layers of rock in Namibia that told a quiet story. Beneath thick bands of glacial debris, there were sudden deposits of limestone, formed only in warm, shallow seas. That meant that after millions of years of ice, the planet had switched almost overnight into a global greenhouse. It wasn't just melting, it was transformation. How could such a frozen world become so warm so quickly? The answer hides in the air itself. Volcanoes, silent for ages beneath the ice, had never truly stopped breathing. They released carbon dioxide, slowly, steadily, while no plants remained to take it in. Over millions of years, this invisible gas built up, thicker, heavier, trapping more and more heat, until one day, the tipping point came. Imagine the sound as the first glacier cracked open, the creak like thunder, the air thick with ancient frost, sunlight bouncing across miles of mirrored ice, and then, a flood, meltwater rushing, carving valleys, filling oceans that had long forgotten how to move. Each drop of water a memory returning. Dr. Richard Alley from Penn State describes it as Earth's greatest comeback. He explains that the trapped carbon dioxide created a runaway warming effect, lifting global temperatures by as much as 50 degrees Fahrenheit. Oceans boiled with energy. Clouds thickened. Rains returned. The snowball was melting fast, leaving behind strange, colorful bands of minerals, the fingerprints of its long sleep. And in that melting water life waited. Bacteria hidden deep in hydrothermal vents had endured the darkness. Now as sunlight returned, they multiplied. They breathed oxygen again. They fed on minerals released by the thaw. Tiny, unseen, they began the slow rebirth of the biosphere. You can almost picture it. The first rays of dawn spilling across a thawing sea. The smell of wet stone, steam rising like ghosts over half-frozen cliffs. Each moment filled with both beauty and danger. For when the world wakes, it doesn't do so gently. Geologists found evidence of violent storms soon after the thaw began. Rain hammered the ground for centuries. Rivers tore through mountains. Sediments washed into the sea, building layers thicker than skyscrapers. It was chaos, creative chaos. A storm that rewrote the planet's surface, and from that chaos, life found room to grow. Gabrielle Walker once said, "The earth had to nearly die to learn how to live." Perhaps she was right, because out of that near death came the tools for balance. Weathering of the new rock began to draw down the excess carbon dioxide. The atmosphere cooled again gently this time, seas settled, rain softened. The first stable climate emerged. As you imagine that shift, notice how calm it feels now. The roaring winds fade, the floods slow to ripples. The ice, once a suffocating cage, becomes water again, fluid, gentle, reflective. Life begins to breathe, deeply and slowly, just as you are now. Microscopic algae started to bloom in shallow seas. They colored the water green and gold. They filled the air with oxygen, feeding everything that followed. Scientists call this the biological explosion, a sudden rise of complexity. Cells joined together, forming the first multicellular beings. Something entirely new had begun. If you look closely at certain rocks in Australia, you can still see their traces. Tiny fossils like grains of dust caught in time, each one a whisper from that moment of awakening. Proof that even after 100 million years of ice, life never truly gave up. And yet the thaw carried its own mystery. Why did it stop when it did? Why didn't the earth continue to heat until it burned? Jotter. James Kirschvink from Caltech offered an elegant answer. He proposed that once the oceans opened, the weathering of fresh rock began to balance the system. The planet found its rhythm again. Too much carbon dioxide dissolved into rain. Mountains and rivers absorbed it, like the planet taking a long, slow breath. Equilibrium returned. Think of that, an entire world exhaling after 100 million years. The rhythm of nature rediscovered. It feels familiar, doesn't it? The way we too drift between extremes, between freezing stillness and blazing motion, between sleep and awakening. As the ice retreated, continents reappeared like old memories resurfacing. They gleamed under the new sun. The sky turned a deeper blue. Rainbows flickered in the mist of waterfalls that hadn't flowed in ages, and in the shallows, creatures began to drift, swim, and seek. They were simple at first, yet filled with endless potential. This was the beginning of complex life. The melting of the earth wasn't just a change in climate. It was a reset of destiny. Every plant, animal, and human that would ever exist began here, in the warmth that followed the cold. The snowball's end was our beginning. Even now, scientists can trace the chemistry of that moment inside our own cells. The iron, the carbon, the oxygen we carry, all shaped by those primal seas. We are, in a quiet and literal way, the children of that thaw. As you listen, you might imagine standing there, barefoot on newly exposed rock, the air damp and cool, steam rising around you, glowing in early light. The world silent except for melting water trickling over stone. You can feel it, the pulse of life beginning again. Each droplet carries the memory of ice. Each gust of wind remembers stillness. And beneath it all, the deep hum of the planet finding balance once more. Hoffman once described the end of Snowball Earth as a miracle of self-correction. He said the feedback systems of the planet are astonishingly resilient, capable of restoring balance even after near-total collapse. It's a comforting thought, that nature, despite its violence, has a quiet wisdom. Maybe that's the real lesson hidden in the frozen earth, that even after the longest silence, warmth returns. Even after deep sleep, awareness stirs. That both the planet and the mind move in cycles of freezing and thawing, forgetting and remembering. So, as the ancient world melted into motion, it wasn't just rocks and oceans that changed. It was consciousness itself. The pattern of renewal was written into everything that would ever live, into every sunrise, every heartbeat, every awakening. And now, as you breathe in and out, you echo that same rhythm, the rise and fall, the melt and the freeze, the silence and the song, a rhythm older than memory, older than life, older than time itself. The earth thawed, life began again, and the long night finally ended. There are stories that survived the ice, not written in stone but whispered in memory, echoes from people who looked at a frozen world and tried to explain what they saw. They did not have satellites or sensors. They had only the sky and their wonder. Long before scientists named the snowball Earth, ancient cultures carried strange tales of a world turned to glass. The Inuit told of endless white nights, when even the moon froze in place. The early Chinese myth of Gong Gong spoke of a time when heaven tilted, and rivers stopped flowing. In India, the Rig Veda hinted at an age of silent water, when light withdrew and the gods slept. Each story sounded like imagination. But when you listen closely, something inside you stirs because it feels like memory, not fiction. Imagine standing in those ancient days, the sky dim, the wind cutting like knives of crystal, no birds, no buzzing of insects, just the endless hush of snow. How would they have understood such a world? To them it must have felt like punishment or rebirth. Thousands of years later, explorers found clues that seemed to echo those myths. In 1818, Captain John Ross sailed through the Canadian Arctic and saw red snow blanketing the ice. He thought it was dust from distant deserts. But when samples were studied, scientists found tiny living algae, hibernating, waiting, blooming again when touched by sunlight. Even in frozen silence, life whispered. In 1907, geologist Edgar S. Bailey discovered glacial scratches on rocks high in the African tropics. He could not explain them. How could ice carve stone near the equator? He wrote, "It is as if the world itself once turned inside out." That single sentence carried the shock of a forgotten age. Dr. Joseph Kirschvink of Caltech would later give it a name, Snowball Earth. He found magnetic signatures inside Namibian rocks, evidence that glaciers once reached sea level at tropical latitudes. But to understand that fully, you must imagine continents where jungles should be, coated instead in frost a mile thick, a living paradox. Ancient myths often mirror such paradoxes. In Norse stories, before the gods were born, there was Ginnungagap, the yawning void between fire and ice. From that tension, creation began. Science calls it phase transition. Mystics call it balance. Perhaps they are the same. Dr. Lynn Margulis, the evolutionary biologist, once said, "Life is the continuous negotiation between chaos and order." The frozen earth might have been that negotiation written across the globe. When you picture it, you can almost feel both the terror and the beauty, the peace of stillness, the waiting. There were also legends of fire beneath the ice. In Siberia, shamans spoke of sleeping volcanoes, mouths of the underworld that would one day breathe again. Centuries later, scientists drilling in the frozen crust found evidence of ancient eruptions, sealed beneath layers of glacial till. The shamans had not been wrong. They had simply spoken in poetry what geology would later translate into numbers. Every civilization seems to carry a version of the freeze. The Bible tells of a flood, but older Hebrew commentaries mention a firmament of crystal that broke apart before the waters came. The Greek philosopher Anaxagoras wrote that the sun had once vanished for an age, and the earth lay dormant until heat returned from heaven. Different words for the same dream. When you listen to these stories, you notice a pattern. Cycles of silence followed by awakening. The Hopi call it the world's long sleep. The Egyptians marked it with the scarab, symbol of rebirth from the underworld. Maybe they all sensed what science later confirmed, that the planet itself sleeps and wakes. Geologists have measured at least two great global freezes, the Sturtian and the Marinoan. Between them, life nearly vanished, yet somehow survived. Imagine microbes clinging to cracks of ice near volcanic vents. Imagine them dividing slowly, waiting for sunlight they could not see. And imagine ancient people, feeling the same rhythm in their own bodies, breathing through winters, trusting that warmth would return. Dr. Gabrielle Walker once wrote, "The past does not disappear, it accumulates beneath our feet." Those words apply not only to stone but to memory. Each myth, each fossil, each grain of silt carries a fragment of that frozen time. Together they form a quiet chorus. The earth remembers. Some accounts from the Middle Ages described blood rains that stained snow in northern lands. People saw them as omens. Today we know such crimson falls were blooms of algae, descendants of the same survivors from Snowball Earth, tiny, fragile, eternal. It's strange to think that what terrified those villagers was actually life announcing itself. The frozen world was never dead. It was dreaming. Just like you when you drift between waking and sleep, your mind still alive beneath the quiet. Drifting deeper now, imagine the planet as a sleeping creature. Its heartbeat slowed but steady, its breath frozen mid-exhale, and deep within, molten fire, waiting. For 100 million years that fire whispered upward, changing nothing, until the moment it changed everything. Volcanic heat and mythic fire. Different languages for the same force. The Greeks called it Prometheus, stolen flame. The Chinese called it Zhurong, the spark of renewal. Science calls it carbon dioxide, yet all of them speak of the same awakening. As you listen, feel how history, myth, and geology begin to blur. The boundaries soften, because truth, like time, is layered. Each generation digs, discovers, forgets, and rediscovers again. Perhaps the ancients did not misremember. Perhaps we are the ones just now remembering fully. Archaeologists once found in a cave near the Black Sea carvings of circular patterns, half sun, half snowflake. Radiocarbon dating placed them long before recorded history. Some said they represented seasons. Others said they represented epochs. Both might be right. Think of how the body knows sleep. It falls, releases, resets. Maybe the earth learned the same trick, freezing not as death but as restoration. When the great thaw finally came, legends spoke of thunder gods splitting the sky or dragons rising from the deep. In truth, it was ice breaking apart, pressure releasing. But to those who watched, it must have looked divine. To witness the world waking up, it would have felt like creation itself. There is a stone in Namibia with alternating dark and light bands, each only a few millimeters thick. Scientists say they formed as glaciers advanced and retreated, year after year. To hold that stone is to touch time layered in rhythm, like a pulse recorded in rock. You can almost hear it beat if you listen long enough. Dr. Hoffman once said the story of Snowball Earth is a message about fragility and endurance. It teaches that life persists through extremes, that silence does not mean absence. The ancients may have felt this truth intuitively. They built rituals around the return of the sun, festivals of light, songs for thawing rivers, celebrations not just of warmth, but of survival. Even now, we repeat those patterns. Every winter we mark solstice, every dawn we welcome light back. The same gratitude written in different languages. Maybe the frozen earth is more than an event in geology. Maybe it's a mirror, a reminder that stillness precedes creation, that everything, planets, cultures, hearts, needs moments of ice to remember its fire. As the myths fade and science remains, they still point to the same wonder, that the earth has already survived its own apocalypse. And each time, it wakes stronger, wiser, more alive. Now, let that idea settle gently in your thoughts. A world that freezes, then breathes again. A rhythm that never ends. You are part of that rhythm, breathing in, breathing out. Stillness and motion, silence and sound, cold and warmth. The ancient storytellers would have called it magic. We call it physics. But the feeling, the awe, is the same. Because whether through myth or measurement, all paths lead to the same quiet truth. Nothing ever truly stops. Not even in the deepest ice. Imagine a world where every sound was swallowed by silence. No wind, no rain, only the faint crack of distant ice. That was Earth, an endless sheet of frozen white, a planet asleep beneath a blanket of time. But this isn't fiction, it's our past. And tonight, as you drift deeper, we'll explore how modern science began uncovering the truth of that ancient freeze. The story began in the early 20th century. In 1907, a young geologist named Douglas Mawson traveled to Antarctica. He chipped through ancient rocks, expecting volcanic stone, but what he found were sediments, signs of rivers and algae buried beneath hundreds of meters of ice. That discovery whispered something impossible. Antarctica once had warmth, and if it froze then thawed, perhaps the same fate befell the whole planet. Decades later, researchers would confirm his suspicion. Dr. Paul Hoffman at Harvard University, alongside Dr. Daniel Schrag, began mapping evidence of global glaciation in the 1990s. Their studies in Namibia revealed layers of rock stacked like memories, thick glacial deposits abruptly capped by carbonate stone, proof that oceans once froze solid, then suddenly melted. They named it the snowball Earth hypothesis, a theory both haunting and elegant. As you listen, picture the scene. Earth 700 million years ago, a frozen sphere spinning in black space, the sun's faint warmth unable to pierce the reflective shield of ice. Temperatures plummeted far below freezing. Even the equator shimmered white. Only the deepest oceans might have stayed liquid, hiding life in shadowed safety. Yet, what caused this unimaginable freeze? Scientists still search for the answer. James Casting from Penn State proposed that volcanic activity may have drawn down carbon dioxide from the air. With less greenhouse gas, the planet cooled. The cooling grew stronger, feeding itself. Once the oceans began to freeze, ice reflected sunlight away, making the cold deepen. Within a few thousand years, the blink of geological time, the whole planet locked in ice. You can almost feel it, the air so still that even sound would hesitate to move. The sky pale and endless, the continents hidden unified under silence, but in this silence something survived. Tiny cyanobacteria, the earliest architects of oxygen, persisted beneath the ice. Dr. Linda Amaral Zettler at the Marine Biological Laboratory found traces of similar microbes thriving in modern frozen lakes. These fragile survivors may have kept life breathing through the coldest chapter in history. Still, not everyone agreed. Some scientists challenged the idea of a complete snowball. They imagined a slushball Earth, where open patches of ocean remained, like breathing holes in the planet's icy skin. Dr. Gerald Kirschvink from Caltech proposed this alternative, arguing that some photosynthesis had to continue, otherwise the planet might have died completely. Perhaps both were right. The world was nearly dead, yet barely alive. It's strange, isn't it, that life can find warmth in the coldest corners of existence. Even now, bacteria rest inside Antarctic glaciers, sleeping for thousands of years, waiting for sunlight. Perhaps in their frozen dreams they hold memories of that ancient time. Modern exploration continues to reveal their secrets. In 2013, the Lake Vostok drilling project reached a body of water sealed beneath nearly 4 kilometers of ice. When samples were drawn, scientists discovered DNA from over 3,000 species: bacteria, fungi, even multicellular organisms. It was proof that life doesn't need sunlight. It only needs patience. Patience, like the planet itself. For millions of years, Earth waited in stillness. Volcanoes kept erupting beneath the ice, releasing carbon dioxide. Slowly and visibly, the greenhouse effect returned. The air thickened, the ice began to melt, and as it melted, the planet awoke. When researchers modeled this process, they found that once the atmosphere reached around 0.1 bar of Cal, hundreds of times higher than today, the ice would have turned to water in less than a century. A frozen eternity, undone in a geological heartbeat. Imagine that first drop of meltwater falling into the silence, a sound the Earth hadn't heard in 100 million years. Then more and more, until oceans roared again, the surface glittered blue. Clouds returned. Rain fell on ancient continents for the first time in eons. But the melt brought danger too. Shuhai Xiao from Virginia Tech found fossil evidence suggesting that the thaw triggered floods of nutrients, feeding explosions of algae, consuming oxygen, suffocating early marine life. Mass death, followed by rebirth. From that chaos emerged the first complex organisms, the ancestors of everything that breathes today. So, out of ice came evolution. The Earth's deepest sleep gave rise to waking life. As you breathe slowly now, feel the rhythm of that cycle. Stillness, change, renewal. The same pattern that shaped our world shapes you. Your body rests, your mind drifts. Yet deep inside, quiet processes keep you alive, just like the microbes beneath the ice. The discoveries continue even now. In 2020, data from Greenland's ice core revealed frozen sediments from an ancient riverbed, untouched for millions of years. It proved that even during deep freezes, parts of the crust were exposed, shaped by running water. The planet never truly stopped. It simply slowed, waiting. And maybe that's the secret message of the snowball Earth, that beneath stillness lies movement. Beneath silence, a pulse. Even when everything seems frozen, life prepares for its next awakening. You can almost hear it. The faint hum of molecules warming in the dark. The whisper of sunlight returning to an ancient sky. A promise that no sleep lasts forever. So now, as you drift deeper into your own stillness, let your breath follow the planet's rhythm. Inhale, the cold air of memory. Exhale, the warmth of renewal. Because even in the longest winters of the mind, spring is already forming beneath the surface. Imagine the world, suspended in a silent white breath. A planet asleep beneath a blanket of eternal frost. The air still, the oceans solid, the mountains shimmering beneath endless ice. There is no sound, no wind, no birds, no motion, just the slow hum of frozen existence, a world that has forgotten how to move. And yet, time in its quiet persistence waits. It does not rush, it does not urge. It simply is. You might picture this as stillness, but beneath that stillness, something ancient still dreamed. The Earth, though frozen, was listening. Every molecule, every crystal of ice carried a memory, a vibration, a whisper from before the freeze, waiting to be remembered. As you listen, allow yourself to drift into that quiet. Imagine the entire planet wrapped in silence. Imagine that silence within yourself, the same calm, the same breathless suspension between moments. Because maybe in that frozen age, the Earth wasn't dying, it was meditating, resting, becoming something new. It's strange, isn't it? We think of time as something that never stops. But what if time, like us, breathes in and out? What if there are moments in the universe when even time holds its breath and the cosmos pauses to listen? Scientists call that ancient pause the snowball Earth, a period, perhaps 700 million years ago, when the entire planet froze from pole to pole. But imagine it differently, not as catastrophe, but as reflection, a sacred interval in the planet's heartbeat. Close your eyes for a moment. Picture the deep blue of frozen oceans, now pale and glassy, the ice stretching endlessly across continents, shimmering beneath a faint, distant sun. Mountains locked in sleep, clouds frozen mid-gesture, their motion captured like a painting. In this vision, you can almost hear the creak of ancient glaciers, slowly shifting like the Earth's own slow breath. As you drift deeper, imagine yourself walking across that endless white. Your footsteps make no sound. The horizon is infinite. You are both alone and completely connected. And in that silence, you begin to sense something extraordinary. A pattern beneath the stillness, a rhythm beneath the calm, like a faint heartbeat echoing through eternity. Could it be that even in the deepest freeze, life was waiting, not gone, just patient? Scientists have found evidence that microorganisms, tiny invisible architects of life, survived this frozen age. They hid beneath thin pockets of liquid water, sheltered in volcanic vents beneath the ice. Even in the most impossible places, warmth persisted, a reminder that creation never truly ends. As you imagine that, feel a soft warmth within your chest, the warmth of continuity, the warmth of knowing that even in absolute stillness, something within you keeps glowing. Maybe that's what the earth was teaching us. That transformation begins with stillness. That creation requires a pause. Drifting deeper, you might recall moments in your own life when everything seemed to stop. A season of waiting, a long silence, a frozen chapter where nothing seemed to move forward. And yet, somehow, beneath the surface you were changing, rearranging, becoming. That's what the earth was doing too. During that 100 million years of frost, the planet was rewriting itself. The minerals shifted, the atmosphere transformed, the balance of carbon and oxygen reset. It was a planetary breath, an inhale so long it seemed eternal. When the ice finally began to melt, the world that emerged was not the same. It was new, richer, more capable of life than ever before. Every drop of melting water was like memory returning, every stream a whisper of awakening. And just as the earth thawed, you too thaw each time you wake, the frozen stillness of sleep giving way to the gentle warmth of awareness. Perhaps time itself moves the same way, only flowing when consciousness opens its eyes, when awareness stirs, when you awaken. If time is tied to observation, then maybe the snowball Earth wasn't just a frozen planet. Maybe it was an unobserved one. No witness, no motion, no clock. The ultimate still point in the universe's long meditation. And now, feel yourself at that still point, between breaths, between thoughts, between the rise and fall of time itself. The quiet expands. The world around you softens. You can almost sense the ice beneath your feet and the ancient sky above. In the distance you see a faint light, the first dawn in 100 million years. It's soft, golden, and slow. It moves not across the sky, but through you. The light feels familiar, like memory, like awakening, like love returning after a long winter. You feel it melt the edges of your thoughts. The frozen questions, the old fears, the heavy layers of time, all of it begins to dissolve, turning into rivers of clarity. You realize now, even frozen worlds can dream, even silence can sing, even endings are beginnings waiting for warmth. The snowball Earth wasn't the end of life. It was the dream before life's greatest awakening. And perhaps so are you. As you rest here, breathing softly, you can feel that rhythm again, that ancient pulse, not from the planet but from deep within. It reminds you that stillness is not emptiness. It is potential. It is the seed of motion, waiting for the right moment to bloom. So when the world feels frozen, when your days seem still, remember, beneath the ice, the fire waits, and even time pauses only to remember itself. Let that truth settle in your heart like snow falling on quiet water. Let it slow your thoughts. Let it soften everything, because the great mystery isn't that the earth froze, it's that it chose to wake again. And so, as you listen, you too can choose to wake gently, to let the warmth of awareness melt through your being, to feel time resume softly, kindly, lovingly. For now, though, rest in the silence between moments. Rest in the beauty of the frozen world. Rest in the peace of knowing that even in stillness, you are alive, and the earth, somewhere in the depths of time, smiles through the ice because it remembers you. Imagine, for a moment, that time is not moving right now, that everything, the sound of your breath, the pulse beneath your skin, the soft air touching your face, exists inside a single, endless instant. No past, no future. It feels strange, doesn't it? Because your mind has been taught to see life as a line, moving forward, step by step, moment by moment. But what if that line is only a story? What if every time you fall asleep, the story pauses, and when you wake, it resumes, as though nothing happened in between? As you continue to listen, allow yourself to drift gently into that thought. Imagine your body resting, but your awareness floating in a still ocean of time. No clocks, no movement, only presence. Dr. Kurt Gödel, a mathematician and friend of Einstein, once proposed that time might not be real at all, that it's a construction of perception, a coordinate of consciousness. He suggested that every moment, past and future, already exists, like pages of a book you can open at any point. It's only awareness that moves between them, giving the illusion of flow. And maybe when you sleep, the reader simply closes the book. The pages remain untouched, eternal, silent. Let that image settle into your mind. A vast book, infinite pages, each one a moment in your life, waiting. Not lost, not gone, just waiting for your attention to awaken them. Time, in this way, becomes like light. It doesn't move unless observed. It remains potential until you see it. Imagine for a moment lying beneath the stars, eyes closed. Above you the galaxies spin, but only if you look. Otherwise, they rest in stillness like thoughts unformed. This is not imagination. Quantum experiments, such as those by Dr. John Wheeler in the 1970s, hinted that the act of observation defines not only the present, but also the past. Particles, in their mysterious dance, behave as if they know when they are being watched. When unobserved, they exist in all possible states at once. Only when you look, only when awareness touches them, do they choose a path. So what does that mean for time itself? Could it be that time flows only where consciousness looks? As you drift deeper into thought, imagine the world around you, your room, your street, your city, all resting in gentle stillness when you close your eyes, waiting, paused, and when you wake, reality unfolds again, perfectly synchronized, as if it had never stopped. Maybe that's why sleep feels like a blink. Maybe in a cosmic sense, it truly is. There's something calming in that idea, isn't there? That nothing is rushing ahead of you, that the universe waits, that time itself respects your rest. When you dream, the mind paints entire worlds, colors, motion, emotion, all outside the clock. Minutes in waking life can become days, weeks, or years inside a dream, and when you open your eyes, it all folds away as if it never existed. Yet it felt real, utterly real. So which reality is more true? The one measured by clocks or the one measured by experience? Philosopher Henry Bergson argued that clock time and lived time are not the same. Clock time is external, mechanical, rigid, linear. Lived time is internal, fluid, elastic, shaped by consciousness itself. When you are joyful, it flies. When you are still, it slows. When you sleep, it disappears. And perhaps that disappearance isn't loss. Perhaps it's restoration, the universe rebalancing itself between moments. There's an ancient Buddhist teaching that says, each night we die a little, each morning we are born again. It's not death in a fearful way. It's a return to formlessness, emerging with the timeless source. Close your eyes now and imagine that truth within yourself. Each night, when you drift off, time dissolves. You return to the same still ocean that the earth once knew during its frozen dream. And when you awaken, consciousness steps back into the river, and the current begins again. So maybe time isn't constant at all. Maybe it's personal. Maybe it's breathing with you, expanding, contracting, waiting. Dean Radin from the Institute of Noetic Sciences once said that consciousness and reality are not separate. They are intertwined like waves in water. You can't move one without touching the other. If that's true, then your awareness doesn't just perceive time. It creates it. Let that settle. The thought that every moment of your life unfolds because you are awake within it, because your mind illuminates it, like sunlight revealing the world each morning. It makes sense, doesn't it? When you fall asleep, the sun sets in your consciousness. The light of awareness dims, and the universe, Your universe rests. Now picture this, a long corridor filled with countless doors. Each door leads to a moment, some familiar, some forgotten. You walk slowly through, touching each one with your fingertips. When you open a door, you step into time. When you close it, the room remains behind you, frozen, waiting. That's how the universe might be structured. Moments waiting for observation, realities waiting for awakening. And maybe that's why day-to-day view feels so haunting, because for a flicker, you've stepped into a moment you've already opened before. Time remembers you. Dr. Mikio Kaku once said that the human mind might exist in more dimensions than we currently perceive. And what we call memory could be consciousness reaching across these layers, touching past and future simultaneously. So when time feels familiar, it might be because your awareness isn't bound by the same rules your body obeys. Perhaps when you sleep, you step outside that structure completely. You visit the spaces between moments, the gaps between beats, the silence between breaths. And in that silence, you are timeless. Think about that as you breathe slowly. Inhale and feel the world forming around you. Exhale and feel it dissolve back into stillness. Each breath a cycle of creation and rest. Each night a pause in the flow of eternity. Scientists still can't fully explain what sleep is or why consciousness disappears so completely. Dr. Matthew Walker from UC Berkeley calls it the most mysterious and essential biological state. Your body restores, your mind cleanses, but your sense of time simply vanishes. As if some ancient part of you remembers what it's like to live beyond the clock. And maybe that's why sleep feels sacred when you surrender to it. Because in that surrender, you return to truth, that time is not a master, but a companion. It moves when you move. It rests when you rest. As you continue to listen, feel the rhythm of your body slowing, your heartbeat finding the same calm tempo as the earth's hidden pulse, your thoughts becoming lighter, like snow settling on quiet water. In this calm, notice how your sense of time fades. Minutes stretch, moments blur, awareness softens, and what's left is simple presence. You are no longer chasing the future or replaying the past. You are suspended, beautifully, between both. It's peaceful here. It feels like forever, and maybe it is. Because forever isn't infinite time. It's the absence of time. It's the eternal now, the still center around which all movement happens. Einstein once said, "The distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion." And maybe that illusion isn't something to fight, but something to rest within, gently, knowingly. Like a dreamer resting within their own dream. So as you drift towards sleep, let go of the line of time. Let it blur, let it fold, let it rest. Because in truth, you are never moving forward. You are always still, watching the current pass around you. The stars move, the planets turn, the clocks tick. But deep within, there is a quiet witness that never changes. That part of you is timeless. It was there before your first breath, and it will be there long after the final one. That's the real mystery. Not that time stops when you sleep, but that you remember, for a few hours each night, what it feels like to live outside of it. So now, as you rest, let that memory return. The soft hum of stillness, the gentle heartbeat of eternity, the silence between seconds, where everything, absolutely everything, is at peace. Time will wait for you, it always does, because perhaps all along it was your dream. And as you drift deeper now into the vast, frozen beauty of timelessness, the only thing that moves is your breath. Imagine the world wrapped in silence, a planet of glass and frost, and then something begins to change. It's slow, almost imperceptible. A whisper beneath the frozen seas, a tremor of warmth, hidden deep within the earth's ancient heart. You can almost hear it, can't you? The faint crack of ice, the first sigh of an ocean remembering how to move. It's as if the planet itself is waking from a dream. For nearly 100 million years, Earth slept beneath that icy shell. And yet, even in that stillness, life waited, tiny, defiant, invisible. Microbes trapped in frozen water, clinging to minerals for warmth. They did not vanish, they endured. And now something stirs them. Scientists call this moment the Great Thaw. But to imagine it fully, you must see it not as a sudden explosion, but as a slow inhale after eons of silence. Deep beneath the ice, volcanic heat begins to rise. Molten rock moves in secret rivers beneath the crust. Carbon dioxide escapes into the sky. A greenhouse begins to form, gentle, fragile. The blanket that once froze the world starts to warm it. Linda Soul from NASA's Goddard Institute once said, "The end of Snowball Earth wasn't an eruption of chaos, but a careful balancing act, a slow dialogue between fire and frost. Each breath of volcanic gas softening the cold's unyielding grip. You can almost picture it. The first drop of liquid water falling through a crack in the ice. The first shimmer of sunlight piercing the clouds. The first wave forming on an ocean that had forgotten motion. And you, as the listener, feel that thaw within yourself. Because the story of Earth's awakening mirrors our own. We, too, spend long seasons frozen in patterns, in silence and stillness. Then, quietly, something shifts. A warmth returns. We begin again. In the geological record, layers of ancient rock tell the story with astonishing clarity. Carbonate deposits left behind by melting glaciers. Rust-colored iron bands showing where oxygen returned to the seas. Each layer whispers. We thawed. We remembered. But perhaps the most beautiful part is how gentle the process was. It wasn't violent. It wasn't sudden. It was patient, tender, inevitable. A truth whispered through every cell of the planet, that nothing stays frozen forever. Dr. Paul Hoffman of Harvard University studied these layers for decades. He found evidence that temperatures rose not by degrees a day, but by fractions of a degree over centuries. A warming so slow you could live a lifetime and never notice the change. And yet, across the ages, those tiny shifts rebuilt a world. Imagine watching that transformation. The endless white slowly giving way to blue and green. Oceans stretching, clouds drifting, sunlight scattering across thawing continents. The air, once dry and thin, growing heavier, richer. Every element awakening in rhythm. It must have been like watching the planet breathe again. And yet, there's something deeper beneath that vision. Because when we observe the world thawing, we're also watching consciousness itself awaken. Not just in a metaphoric way, but biologically, chemically, even quantumly. Think about it. Every chemical reaction that supports life depends on movement, on warmth, on flow. Without motion, there's no evolution. Without evolution, there's no memory, no awareness. So when the world began to thaw, it wasn't just the return of water. It was the return of time itself. Time as we know it is measured through change. When nothing moves, time has no meaning. But when ice melts, when waves ripple, when air stirs, the clock begins to tick again. So maybe when the earth froze, time truly paused. And when it thawed, time awoke. Drifting deeper into that thought, imagine if that's true for you too. When you fall into stillness, into deep sleep or deep silence, perhaps time softens around you. Perhaps you too step outside the clock until warmth returns. In that way, the Earth's story becomes a mirror of your own cycles. The freeze and the thaw, the stillness and the renewal, the sleep and the awakening. As the world warmed, sunlight scattered across the surface once more. The albedo, that's the reflectivity of the ice, decreased. More heat was absorbed, the process accelerated, and yet the balance remained delicate. Had it warmed too quickly, the oceans could have boiled. Too slowly, and life might never have returned. It's remarkable, isn't it? How the universe seems to hold such balance, even in its chaos, a precision that feels intentional. And it's here that philosophy begins to merge with science. Ancient thinkers from India, Greece, and China all spoke of cycles, yugas, ages, and cosmic breaths. The Rig Veda describes creation as breathing in and out of existence. Laozi wrote of the Tao as the eternal flow between stillness and motion. The Stoics called it akpirosis, the burning and renewal of worlds. And now, in our understanding of Earth's frozen epochs, we see that pattern reflected again. What if every global freeze, every mass extinction, every rebirth is part of a larger pulse? A rhythm so vast we can only sense it faintly, like a heartbeat beneath the stars. Dr. Raymond Pierre Humbert from Oxford once noted, "The snowball Earth cycles might not be anomalies, they might be the planet's way of resetting its thermostat." A cosmic exhale followed by a deep inhale. You listening now are part of that same rhythm. You breathe with the planet. You warm, you cool. You fall asleep, you awaken. The micro and the macro dance in synchrony. The first multicellular organisms appeared soon after the thaw. It's as though life had been preparing in silence, rehearsing beneath the ice. And when the stage was ready, when light and warmth returned, it stepped forward, changed forever. Sponges, algae, early animals, they emerged into a world washed clean. The ocean, newly oxygenated, became a cradle for complexity. The Cambrian explosion was waiting just ahead. But for now, life moved quietly, carefully, reverently. As you continue to listen, imagine standing on that shore, the air crisp but gentle, the water shimmering under the newborn sun. You feel the warmth on your skin, the slow rise of temperature, the breath of the planet. You can almost sense what those first creatures must have felt. The curiosity, the tentative stretch toward the light, the rediscovery of motion. And in that image, maybe you feel your own inner thaw, a slow release of whatever has been frozen within you. Because that's what this story has been about all along. Not just geology or chemistry or paleoclimate models, but the deeper truth that nothing stays cold forever. Dr. Gabrielle Walker, in her book Snowball Earth, described the thaw as the most miraculous spring in history, a rebirth written not in poetry, but in physics. And yet it feels like poetry, because everything about it, the timing, the fragility, the beauty, speaks to something deeply human. We too thaw from long winters of thought and emotion. We too find light again after deep cold. It's part of who we are, the rhythm of existence itself. Imagine now the frozen mountains dripping with meltwater, the sound of ice collapsing into rivers, the wind whispering through newborn forests. It's almost as though the planet is singing, and you are part of that song. Your heartbeat, your breath, your thoughts, all woven into that universal melody. As warmth spreads across the continents, new colors return. Green mosses, blue oceans, golden light. The silence of the ice age replaced by the quiet hum of life. And beneath it all, the earth remembers. Every freeze, every thaw, every story. It carries them like dreams in its stone. You can rest now, knowing that even the longest winters end, even the deepest sleeps awaken. The warmth always returns. So as you drift deeper into relaxation, let your mind follow the rhythm of that thaw. Each breath a little warmer, each heartbeat a little slower, each thought dissolving gently, like snow beneath the morning sun. And as the last of the ice melts away, and the world breathes again, so do you. The long silence is over. The awakening has begun. Imagine the world waking up, a planet of ice cracking open, the sun rising over sheets of blue that have glowed for 100 million years. The silence is broken by the first sound of water dripping, falling, singing softly to itself. It's strange to think that this frozen planet, this earth entombed in ice, could ever come back. And yet it did. Somehow in the stillness of geological time, something stirred. Scientists call it the Great Thaw, a rebirth, a second beginning. Dr. Malcolm Francis, a geochemist at the University of Cambridge, once described it as the most miraculous transformation in the history of our planet. Because from the edge of absolute stillness, from the frozen death of the snowball Earth, came rivers, oceans, clouds, and the first signs of multicellular life. How could that happen? What woke the planet up? And why, after nearly 100 million years of sleep, did the Earth choose to breathe again? As you continue to listen, allow yourself to imagine that scene. The world slowly stirring, the air thick with mist, the first winds moving over melting plains of ice. You can almost hear it, that sound of awakening. For years, scientists searched for evidence of this thaw. They found it in Namibia, where layers of limestone rested directly atop ancient glacial rocks. A strange pairing that shouldn't exist. Limestone forms in warm seas. Glacial deposits form in deep cold. And yet, here they were touching. Proof that ice and warmth had danced together in a single breathtaking shift. Dr. Paul Hoffman from Harvard University studied these Namibian rocks in the 1990s. His team dated the layers, ran isotope analysis, and realized that the shift from ice to ocean happened almost overnight in geological terms. What they found was astonishing, a planet thawing in less than a few thousand years. The trigger, according to Dr. Hoffman, might have been volcanic chyle. During the long freeze, volcanoes kept erupting, releasing carbon dioxide into the air. But because the oceans were locked under ice, the gas couldn't dissolve back in. It accumulated and accumulated until finally it built a greenhouse so powerful that the ice began to melt. The Great Thaw had begun. In the same period, halfway across the globe, another scientist, Dr. Linda Soule from Columbia's Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory, ran complex climate models. She simulated what would happen if a frozen Earth suddenly built up CO over millions of years. The result was explosive. Once melting started, it cascaded rapidly. The planet's surface darkened, absorbing sunlight. The oceans reawakened, and the carbon cycle, dormant for eons, surged to life again. You can almost imagine it. Sheets of ice collapsing into vast, roaring meltwater rivers, volcanoes glowing beneath glacial caps, steam rising into a sky that hadn't seen clouds for millions of years. It must have been a sight beyond imagination, a planet remembering how to live. But the thaw wasn't gentle. The rapid melting released floods that reshaped continents. The atmosphere filled with storms. Global temperatures may have spiked to levels unthinkable today, nearly 50 degrees C in some regions. The oceans turned acidic. Yet, out of that chaos, life adapted. Fossils from this time show the first complex organisms forming, multicellular algae, sponges, and early plankton. The snowball Earth, once lifeless, became the cradle of complexity. Dr. Shuhai Xiao from Virginia Tech discovered microscopic fossils from this exact period in China's Dashantuo Formation. Tiny embryos perfectly preserved. The oldest known evidence of multicellular life, evolving immediately after the Great Thaw. He called it the biological dawn of everything. It's almost poetic. From the planet's deepest freeze came its warmest bloom. And yet, some scientists think there was something else at play, something almost mystical in its timing. Because the Great Thaw didn't just warm the Earth. It synchronized evolution. It set the stage for the Cambrian explosion, the sudden burst of life forms that would fill the oceans only tens of millions of years later. How did everything align so perfectly? Could it be that the cycles of catastrophe and renewal are woven into the very structure of time? That every stillness carries the memory of awakening within it? Drifting deeper into this thought, imagine lying beneath ancient ice, feeling the slow pulse of warmth from the planet's heart. A heartbeat rising through the stone, through the frozen crust, until one day it becomes unstoppable. Some researchers, like Dr. Martin Kennedy from the University of Adelaide, believe that as the ice melted, it released a flood of nutrients and minerals into the ocean. Phosphates, iron, essential ingredients for life. These nutrients fed early microorganisms, which in turn released oxygen, a feedback loop of life building more life, a perfect storm of chemistry and evolution. And so the planet, once asleep for ages, began to breathe, deeply, rhythmically. It's as though the Earth itself was meditating through that silence, gathering strength for its next chapter. The melting continued for thousands of years. Continents shifted, ocean currents rebalanced, and slowly the atmosphere became stable again. The greenhouse faded, rain returned, the skies cleared. From a scientific standpoint, it's one of the most remarkable climate transitions ever recorded. From a philosophical one, it's the ultimate metaphor for awakening. Every system that sleeps eventually must wake. Every frozen state eventually must melt into flow. And perhaps every consciousness too. Because if Earth itself can fall asleep for 100 million years and still find its way back to warmth, then maybe what we call the end is never really the end. It's only a pause, a moment between breaths. Let that thought settle in your mind, like snow falling on still water. As the planet warmed, the first true oceans were formed. Coral-like structures appeared. Photosynthetic organisms painted the seas green again. Light returned to depth. And in this new world, the first ecosystems began to dance. Small, fragile, shimmering forms of life. Each one a testament to persistence. Dr. David Catling, a planetary scientist from the University of Washington, once said that Earth's resilience is its greatest mystery. No matter how close to the edge it comes, it finds balance again, as if guided by something deeper than physics alone. And maybe that's true for you too. Every time you've frozen in fear, or paused in stillness, or felt trapped in your own winter, there was something quietly waiting underneath. Something ready to thaw. The science of the Great Thaw isn't just about rock layers and isotopes. It's about cycles. Endless, patient, miraculous. The same cycles that pulse in your breath, in your heartbeat, in the rhythm of your thoughts. Even in silence, something moves. Even in sleep, something grows. Even in stillness, time continues. As researchers continue studying these glacial remnants, from Namibia to China to Canada, they find more proof of just how close the Earth came to never waking again. And yet it did, against all odds. So tonight, as you drift toward rest, imagine that moment when the first crack appeared in the ice. A small sound, barely audible, but it carried the promise of everything, because sometimes the smallest crack can awaken a world. Somewhere beneath the sands of time, there are stories that never froze, stories that survived the great forgetting, stories carved in stone, painted on temple walls, etched into tablets that whisper of a world before memory. For centuries, scholars dismissed them as myths, poetic exaggerations of floods, fires, and celestial cycles. But now, science is beginning to listen and to wonder. What if those ancient voices were describing the same global stillness we call snowball Earth? What if the oldest myths were scientific records, written in symbols? It began, as many revelations do, with fragments, clay tablets unearthed from the ruins of Nineveh, once the heart of the Assyrian Empire. There in the dust, archaeologist Sir Austin Henry Layard uncovered the library of Ashurbanipal, thousands of cuneiform tablets dating back to the 7th century BCE. Among them were passages describing an age when the sun slept and the heavens froze. To most, it was myth. To geologists reading centuries later, it sounded hauntingly familiar. The idea of a silent sun, a dimmed sky, a frozen earth, echoed precisely what climate scientists found in the geological record. You can almost imagine it. Ancient scribes writing by torchlight, their hands trembling as they copied stories passed down through millennia. Stories of the cold that once took everything, and the warmth that brought it all back. Thousands of miles away in Egypt, similar tales were told in the pyramid texts, the oldest religious writings in human history. They spoke of a time when the waters were ice, the sky was sealed, and Ra slept in the underworld. In the language of myth, this meant a cycle of death and rebirth. But what if, beneath the poetry, it described something real? A cosmic winter that the people somehow remembered. Dr. Karkun, Egyptologist from UCLA, once remarked that Egyptian texts often blend celestial memory with earthly catastrophe. She suggested that these myths might encode environmental events from far earlier epochs, perhaps even the end of global glaciations that predated humanity itself. It's difficult to fathom. How could ancient cultures know about something that happened hundreds of millions of years ago? And yet, again and again, across civilizations, the same archetypes appear. In India's Rig Veda, there are hymns to the long night of Brahma, a period when creation rests, silent, waiting cold, before awakening into new worlds. The Sanskrit word pralaya means dissolution, a time when the universe dissolves into darkness and ice before being reborn. It is eerily similar to what modern scientists describe as the cryogenian period, when the Earth's oceans froze from pole to pole, then thawed into a new evolutionary dawn. Imagine that, an ancient hymn from thousands of years ago, echoing the rhythm of planetary cycles written in rock. Even the Maya spoke of suns and ages, each ending with destruction and silence followed by renewal. The Popol Vuh, their sacred text, tells of previous worlds that turned to stone or were covered in frozen mist. It's as though deep in human consciousness, the memory of a frozen world never left, a kind of ancestral knowing. In 1968, anthropologist Dr. Mercy Iliade wrote that humanity's oldest myths carry echoes of cosmological trauma, events so ancient, so world-altering, that they became embedded in the collective psyche. Perhaps the freezing of the planet, the silence of a world entombed in ice, was one of them. Drifting deeper into this idea, consider how myths function. They compress time. They turn millions of years into moments. They carry truth, but not in literal form. Maybe these myths are not history, but memory. Some researchers have gone further. In 2011, geologist Dr. Robert Schoch, known for his work on the Sphinx's geological age, proposed that civilizations may hold symbolic records of extreme climate events stretching back tens of thousands of years, even to lost prehistorical cultures. He pointed to the Göbekli Tepe site in Turkey, a 12,000-year-old temple that predates writing, agriculture, and the pyramids. Its stone pillars depict celestial symbols, animals, and abstract shapes that some researchers interpret as star maps and cosmic warnings. Carved into one pillar, the vulture stone, are symbols that might depict a comet impact or sudden environmental shift. Some believe it could represent the Younger Dryas, a mini ice age that hit Earth roughly 12,800 years ago. But what if Göbekli Tepe's builders were remembering something even deeper? A story not of a single freeze, but of the pattern of worlds that freeze and thaw again and again. When you walk through those ruins today, wind brushing through ancient stones, you can feel it. A quiet reverence, as though the people who built it knew they were marking the rhythm of creation itself. And perhaps they were. Modern science, for all its precision, still finds itself standing in the shadow of ancient mystery. Each new discovery only deepens the question: how much have we forgotten? How many truths were carved into myth because they could not be measured, only felt? In 2003, archaeologist Dr. Graham Hancock wrote that history is not a line, but a spiral. Each age repeats lessons, each cycle echoes the last, and maybe in that spiral, the snowball Earth was not a one-time event, but a recurring breath in the life of a planet that knows how to renew itself. Even the Aboriginal Australians speak of the dreaming, a timeless state where creation and destruction are simultaneous, a frozen stillness before motion. And the Norse, in their Eddas, spoke of Fimbulwinter, the endless winter that precedes rebirth. Over and over, cultures divided by oceans and millennia told the same story. There was a great cold, there was silence, and then there was light again. Could it be coincidence? Or are we hearing humanity's echo of a cosmic event? The Earth's great slumber, passed down through generations as myth, song, and prayer. As you breathe slowly, imagine standing among those ancient ruins. The air cool, the stone beneath your hand cold and solid. You can almost hear the faint hum of memory in the wind. Because even the Earth remembers, and through us, it speaks. Some scholars argue that myth and geology are not opposites. They are two languages describing the same experience, one emotional, one empirical. Dr. David Leeming, a comparative mythologist, once said, "Science describes what happens. Myth describes what it feels like when a world freezes, when light vanishes, when life forgets itself then remembers." And in that sense, the myths of the Great Cold are not primitive fantasies. They are the emotional record of the planet's deep time, the feeling of the Earth as it slept. As archaeology advances, we continue to uncover more fragments, symbols of spirals, serpents shedding their skin, suns dying and returning. Always the same rhythm, always the same truth hidden beneath language. Even now, satellites above Earth scan the frozen cores of Greenland and Antarctica, reading layers of ice like ancient scrolls. Each layer a chapter, each bubble a whisper, and through them, the planet tells its story again. The story of freezing, the story of waking, the story of the endless cycle between stillness and flow. Tonight, as you drift deeper, imagine yourself walking through time, past temples, past carvings, past words that no longer have names. You are part of that same rhythm, the remembering, the thawing, the quiet discovery that nothing is truly lost. And as the Earth once thawed from its long sleep, so too do we awaken again and again into knowing. Because every frozen truth eventually melts back into light. Sometimes, the greatest mysteries aren't buried deep underground. They're sitting right in front of us waiting, hidden in plain sight. Think about it. The world is full of patterns you pass by every day without noticing. Ripples in stone that look like waves. Circular mountains that resemble craters. Bands of color frozen into cliffs like pages in an ancient book. All quiet, all patient, all telling the same story. The story of a planet that once slept beneath ice. For centuries, people looked at these formations and thought little of them. A curiosity, perhaps. A coincidence. Until a handful of scientists started to notice the strange consistency. The same types of rock. The same formations appearing on opposite sides of the Earth. Separated by oceans, yet identical in signature. As if the planet had once been wrapped in the same blanket of cold. In 1840, a young Swiss geologist named Louis Agassiz presented a radical idea. He told a gathering of scientists that Europe had once been covered in glaciers that reached far beyond the Alps. They laughed. The idea was absurd at the time. Europe under ice. But Agassiz had seen the evidence himself, huge boulders resting in valleys miles from any mountain, scratches across stone that ran in perfect parallel lines. Signs, he said, of slow, grinding movement, the work of glaciers. Over time the laughter faded, the evidence grew, and the idea that ice had once shaped the earth became undeniable. But Agassiz didn't know just how far that story went. He couldn't have imagined that long before the last ice age, the entire planet was one vast frozen sphere. Still, his curiosity opened a doorway, a way of seeing the world differently, of reading the land like a text. Because everywhere you look, the earth still carries marks of its ancient sleep. In Namibia, the desert sands hide smooth, rounded stones known as dropstones. They don't belong there. They were carried by icebergs, dropped into mud when the glaciers melted hundreds of millions of years ago. In Scotland, near the town of Portaskeg, geologists found layers of mudstone cut by strange vertical cracks, formed when frozen ground thawed under sudden warmth. And in the Flinders Ranges of Australia, shimmering blue rocks contain microscopic bubbles of ancient air, pockets from the time when oxygen levels shifted as ice melted and life began to bloom again. Each piece a clue, each formation a whisper, the earth remembering. But not all clues come from stone. Some are written in the atmosphere itself. High above us, in thin air, atoms of oxygen and carbon bear silent witness to past climates. By measuring the ratios of isotopes in rocks and fossils, scientists can reconstruct temperatures from 500 million years ago, like reading a weather report written in chemistry. Dr. Paul Hoffman, a geologist at Harvard, helped pioneer this field in the 1990s. He studied ancient rocks in Namibia and Canada and found chemical signatures that made no sense in a normal climate. Oxygen isotopes were far too light, carbon levels far too low. The only explanation, massive planet, wide glaciation, snowball Earth. But the truly astonishing part came later. When researchers compared those isotope readings with other data, they found something else, periodic bursts of life immediately after each deep freeze. As if the planet, after long silence, took a deep breath and began again. The clues were hiding not only in stone, but in the very fabric of life. Shuhai Xiao from Virginia Tech discovered microfossils from that same era. Simple organisms that suddenly diversified after the Great Thaw. He described it as a biological explosion from the shadow of ice. That phrase still echoes, because it suggests something profound. Maybe the freezing wasn't an end. Maybe it was a reset. Imagine for a moment, you're standing at the edge of an ancient glacier, the air sharp and still. Beneath your feet, beneath miles of ice, microscopic life waits, dormant, patient, until one day warmth returns. The melt begins, and life rushes out like a tide, painting the planet green again. That pattern, freeze, silence, rebirth, repeats through every scale of existence. You see it in forests after winter, in volcanoes that sleep, then bloom into fire, even in your own breath, the pause before the inhale, the stillness before motion. Scientists find the same rhythm written in unexpected places, coral reefs, tree rings, even in salt flats that shimmer under the desert sun. Each contains traces of ancient chemistry, ratios of oxygen and carbon that mirror those frozen ages. It's as if the entire planet has been quietly recording its own heartbeat for billions of years. And yet, many of the most important clues are overlooked. A simple stone in a streambed, a faint line across a cliff, the pattern of sediment in a core sample. To most eyes, just nature's art, but to the trained eye, evidence of the impossible. Dr. Judy Topman Parrish, a paleoclimatologist, once described the Earth's surface as a palimpsest, a manuscript written, erased, and rewritten countless times. The story of snowball Earth, she said, is still visible, if you know how to read between the lines. Even technology now plays detective. Satellites scan the planet with infrared and radar, peeling back layers of soil and snow to reveal patterns invisible to the human eye. They've found glacial grooves in places once thought untouched, deep beneath the Sahara, beneath the Amazon, even beneath the ocean floor. Signs of a frozen world long forgotten. In 2021, a team at NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center used satellite data to map buried ice in regions where it should not exist. Their conclusion was simple and haunting: the memory of ice never fully fades. It's strange, isn't it? We think of history as something that happens once, something we move beyond. But the Earth doesn't forget. It keeps records everywhere, in crystals, in air, and light. It hides them not to conceal, but to wait for us to notice. As you listen now, you might feel the same truth in yourself, because human memory works the same way. Moments buried deep within, waiting quietly until the right conditions let them rise again. The planet's story and your story, both written in layers, both still unfolding. Even art carries the same resonance. In caves across Europe, ancient paintings of mammoths, reindeer, and cold, blue bison cover stone walls. These artists were the first to live after the ice withdrew. Their world was still thawing. They painted warmth as if they were conjuring it. Color as resurrection. Every stroke, every pigment was both prayer and evidence, proof that life had returned, that the sun had come back. In one cave in France, researchers found a small handprint outlined in red ochre. A child's hand pressed against the stone tens of thousands of years ago. Around it faded patterns of spirals and dots. At first, archaeologists thought it was decoration. Later, they realized the spirals mirrored the path of melting water through the cave ceiling, perhaps an early human's attempt to map the slow drip of thawing ice. Even art, it seems, can be a scientific record hidden in plain sight. The same is true in modern data. We build instruments to observe climate, atmosphere, and geology, and sometimes miss what the data itself is whispering. In 2018, a group of computational physicists analyzing climate models noticed small, repeating fluctuations buried in the noise of the graphs. They realized those fluctuations corresponded to faint echoes of ancient glacial cycles, preserved mathematically in the planet's carbon feedback systems. Hidden in plain sight again, everything leaves an imprint, even silence. If you close your eyes for a moment, imagine looking at Earth from orbit, blue oceans, white clouds, brown continents. Now slowly, imagine the temperature dropping. The white expands, the blue fades, until everything, oceans, forests, mountains, lies under a smooth shell of ice. That was our world once. And though the ice melted, its fingerprint remains in every stone, every breath, every piece of living matter. When researchers drill deep into Antarctic ice, they pull up cylinders of frozen time. Inside, microscopic air bubbles shimmer, tiny mirrors reflecting atmospheres from hundreds of thousands of years ago. Each layer tells a story of change, of rhythm, of recovery. Those same rhythms echo in coral growth rings, in magnetic shifts, in subtle tilts of the planet's axis. All connected, all part of one quiet pattern. Even cities, our modern creations, sit upon these layers. Beneath streets and foundations, old glacial deposits form the bedrock of progress. In New York, Chicago, London, the land itself is built upon the remnants of ancient ice movement. Our civilization literally rests upon memory. As you drift deeper into thought, let that sink in. Every breath you take contains molecules once trapped in ancient glaciers. Every drop of water has cycled through frozen and liquid states countless times. You are breathing history. You are part of the same continuum. Sometimes the greatest discoveries aren't in laboratories or observatories. They happen in moments of still observation, when someone finally notices what has been there all along. A pattern, a mark, a quiet truth, because the universe hides nothing. It simply waits for the right kind of attention. And so, the clues remain, in stones, in data, in myth, in you, each one pointing toward the same revelation. The planet remembers perfectly. It always has, and perhaps if we learn to look closely, patiently, with wonder instead of haste, we might remember too. The ice never truly left, it only changed form, waiting, silently, for someone to notice its reflection in everything that still moves, breathes, and dreams. The edge of current technology feels less like a border, and more like a horizon, an infinite line where science meets the unknown. As satellites drift high above the blue curve of Earth, their sensors listen. They listen to the whispers of light, the faint reflections bouncing off snow, ice, and stone. Each signal carries a memory. Each line of data is a story from the frozen heart of time. Far below in Antarctica, research bases glow faintly in the endless white. Tiny figures in orange suits move slowly through the wind, drilling into ice that has not seen the sun for millions of years. Each layer they pull up is a page from a diary, written in air bubbles, sealed in silence. Inside those bubbles, ancient atmospheres still breathe,